Hey, everybody. I'm here tonight with Cory Pinegar, Chief Executive Officer of Reach, a groundbreaking dental service startup helping dental practices increase patient engagement and revenue. Now, Reach has been named one of the fastest growing companies by Inc. 500, and you're probably wondering why I'm here talking to a guy who runs a dental company. Well, in 2021, Cory founded the remote staffing company called Teem, Teem, which helps simplify hiring international talent for eye care practices. And Teem allows businesses to circumvent domestic staffing issues and find qualified talent without worrying about complicated research to understand the legalities, fair compensation, and the like. And Cory studied economics and business at Brigham Young University. And welcome, Cory.
Hey, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Welcome to eye care as well. That's exciting. It's been impressive stuff you did in dental. Can't wait for you to repeat your success here.
Oh, it's been, moving a lot of my work through, the last 8 years has been in brick and mortar healthcare. And on the, initial service level or surface level, dentistry and optometry and audiology all look similarly, or even, chiropractic. And then you really dive into the weeds and learn so much individuality about how these sectors run. So moving from dentistry over here has just been fascinating to learn where there are similarities and then where there's also a lot of differences.
Yeah, that's an interesting conversation for another show. You haven't been exposed that much to those other professions other than getting my teeth clean and just observing things around the office. But optometry, one of the big differentiators in optometry, of course, is we have out of all the things you mentioned, the biggest retail end. And that's a big part about our practices. And when I'm getting ahead of myself now, but when we want to hire new staff, and whether it's in office or remote, there's a huge learning curve to get them familiar with everything from the processes for fitting contact lenses and all the way through the optical retail process. So I think we're one of the more complicated professions because of that. So
no, there's multiple different facets. And then there's the complexity of individual EHRs. There's the complexity of cash pay patients versus insurance patients and understanding the nuances. So there's so many different ends.
Exactly. But that's all fine and dandy. We're here to talk specifically about the staffing issues for optometry. So I'm glad you could join us. And I want to jump into this by starting talking about all the craziness that has happened in the workplace that was brought about by COVID. Now that we are on the other end of that, for now at least, I want to walk through what I observed happening in my practice. There was downsizing. Then the situation forced us to get used to using technology for remote work to a degree, Zoom and remote eye exams for those of us who did that. And then I feel like that bled into the Great Resignation, where a lot of people chose quality of life over full-time work, and made it harder to find high qualified people. And we're kind of stuck in some kind of limbo, it seems to me now. There's like a dearth of qualified employees. Ones who are qualified, it has driven up the salaries and created a real burden on small businesses. So I guess the question is, where does Teem fit into that picture?
Yeah. And I fell into this space as well. I was working in dental, just to give everyone a little background on why this company even exists, or why I'm extremely passionate about it, is what you just described, that dearth of talent, that high level of resignation we had during COVID. We were running a large scheduling center for dental practices, 3,800 practices we had, and hundreds of schedulers behind that. And we could not attract and retain talent. It was nightmarish to remain staffed. And so I got in contact with someone from Brigham Young University, and there's a program called BYU Pathways, Alan. And it is for people who want to attend the same exact classes and courses I did at BYU, but they happen to live in Latin America. So these are people who speak fluent English, graduate from a 4-year university with a certificate or a degree. And once they graduate, they obviously want to earn a higher level of income. They're very driven individuals. But in Brazil and Argentina and Nicaragua, there's not a lot of great opportunity. And so we started to hire people directly from the program at BYU Pathways. What was great about this is we got people extremely driven. Number one, they had just completed a US level of education. They had minimal or non-existent accents, but the biggest thing is they wanted to be a part of the company. This was not an entry-level position where they were just taking home a paycheck. What we were paying them, just as an example here in Brazil, put them in the top 25% of earners. And so you got people who are qualified, but then you also got people who stick around. The original 2 people we hired years ago are still on our team today. And so when this transformed our business, number one, we saved money. We had more reliable team members, and we could scale when we needed and how we needed, instead of hoping and praying some people would come in to interview. And being an entrepreneur, at the end of the day, I was like, well, if this has transformed our business in a way I could have never expected, I need to go out there and offer this to other people. And so that's the genesis of Teem about 18 months ago, taking this to market. Since then, we've placed hundreds of roles within the brick and mortar healthcare space, and it's really taken off like wildfire.
That's awesome. I know, we can sit here and I can think about how it feels and the experiences I have when I'm short on staff and the inefficiencies that arise out of that. And there's, even when you're not short on staff, there's inefficiencies that arise. What are some of the inefficiencies that you've witnessed in the practices you've served, and how could a virtual team member help to fill those gaps, improve those inefficiencies?
Really good question. So the reason that we chose to get into this specific space is because of data. We started looking at where are there inefficiencies within brick and mortar healthcare practices. And when we looked here, 27 to 28% of all phone calls that were going out were going missed. And this is during business hours. And so we thought, okay, this is during business hours, and people just don't realize 2, 3, 4 phone calls. And this is from pulling millions of phone calls from major phone companies around the United States. There is problems that need to be solved. Number one, you've got new patients. You're spending marketing dollars. People are calling and they're not reaching a practice. That could be because you're not staffed. There's also certain times of the day that are just very hard to staff to the level of phone calls coming in. When we looked specifically here, we saw from about 8 to 9:30 in the morning, there was a high volume of missed phone calls. People are doing their morning huddle. They're just getting into the practice for the day. There's also a swath of people driving to work or who have on their checklist today to call in and make an appointment. And then during that lunch hour, where there's less team members on the phones or none, that 11 to 1 period also was a significantly higher call volume. So these virtual team members are meant to integrate into the team. We are not a third-party call center. What we do is we take amazingly talented people and we can stack them right into your phone system so that if people are answering on 3 or 4 rings, they're there. They can be submitting insurance work. They can be following up with people who have not scheduled recently or need to come in for routine healthcare check-ins. And so there's just natural inefficiencies within almost all small businesses that can easily get put on the back burner because you've got to call a vendor to get a chair fixed, or you need to order more parts, and there's patients checking in and out. There's payments that need to be made. But if people naturally build more efficiency within their business, which takes more team members, because most front desk team members have 1 million hats that they need to wear. And so the goal of this is to add 1 more, but add at a half or a third of the cost of doing it in the United States, where it's also not burdening the group in a way where there's no profit left over for the doctor at the end of the day.
I can see that. This is still foreign in optometry. I'm glad you're bringing it in. What about that's the practice experience. Tell us about what's the patient experience dealing with a new or a recently brought on team member that's a virtual like that.
Yeah, really good question. So number one, we need to, as an organization, we need to bring people who have minimal or non-existent accents. So that's like a qualification for us doing our job.
That was one of my questions. I was going to talk about that as well.
Oh, I mean,
Yeah.
I will be the first to admit, being very genuine here. I've called Visa's call center or MasterCard. Someone picks up the phone and you're wondering if it's English or if it's not. And so we want to give really qualified people who have spoken English, if not for all of their lives, for a significant period of time. Now, what's interesting about what we do is we don't just place a random human being with a practice. The practice does the final interview. And they can say, I like the cultural characteristics. They're really bright and bubbly. They have high attention to detail. Their accent fits what I would accept within my practice. And so if this team member is integrated and trained like anyone else that would be hired physically in the location, there isn't a difference. We are not here to say, lower your standards, hire someone who's not doing as good of a job. The great thing about this is these team members should stick around for years to come. So instead of training new front desk staff every 12 to 18 months, there's consistent, more steady rocks within the organization that know how to schedule, know how follow-up should be done, and are really at the top tier of education and drive for their country, which is something that you often can't find for certain front desk roles within the United States. This really should actually move things forward. But I do want to preface that this does take the full amount of training, just like bringing a team member into the practice that you hired directly.
So that's great, but the question was about the patient experience. What is a patient going to notice any difference between a virtual team member and an on-site team member?
I don't think so, as long as they're trained well.
Well, yeah, assuming they go through the process like anyone might. Our audience, the doctors and practice owners who are listening to this, can expect the patient experience to go on uninterrupted and the efficiencies to be filled. Is there anything that they should think about other than that, or it's just like that? Done.
I mean, at the end of the day, that's still a lot of work to get there. So this is not, hey, snap your fingers and it's in the seat.
Well,
but no, if we're not offering the experience at the end of the day that you just mentioned, we're not doing our job right.
Good. Yeah. Oh, I didn't mean it to tell you it was going to be like that. It's probably the same as training any employee, and probably different in some ways, but I imagine the time frame is similar.
And you're correct in a call out here that remote training is different than in person, where you can, they can observe many things happening or many different things happening within a practice. You have to be on Zoom or on Google Meets, or you have to be messaging back and forth within a communication platform to talk about things. And so it also is a little different. And as companies come on, the vast majority that we are working with have not hired remotely before. It's not that common within these industries. And so we help walk people through and provide white pages and a full-time success manager so that you can make it successful and are given the tools and knowledge to succeed.
I was just thinking about other places you save money. First of all, you're not going to be, when you buy the staff lunch, they're not going to be in on that. And you don't have to get them Secret Santa gifts.
And one thing you haven't asked,
a little chuckle there. That was a good
joke. There's cost saving. And one thing you didn't ask, but I just want to make sure, because it's really important for us to share, is what our pricing is for a full-time team member. All of the taxes, everything included that we do, it's $1,600 a month. And for a part-time team member, which is 20 full working hours within a week, it's $800. And so we never want the price to be under the hood of a car where people have to come get a demo and then they get a quote after that. We want list pricing that's fair and accessible for everyone and really helps drive more profitability within their practice.
Great. Yeah, that was a question I was going to ask. Jumped ahead. I got a couple more before we get there, but doesn't matter. Thank you for that. So that's the cost side. How might hiring a virtual team member translate into more revenue for a practice?
Yeah, great question. So to go back to that original inefficiency comment, if a mid-20% of phone calls are going missed, those are new and existing patients that could and should be scheduled. So there's more revenue, getting existing patients who should be coming back in more routinely back on the schedule. And it's very easy for us then to go into the EHR and look at the number of appointments these team members are scheduling personally, and then associate that to the production and collections of the practice.
Yeah, that's obviously, that's great. And then I'm sure you can bring in 2, maybe 3 team members for the cost of one if their job can be done virtually.
Exactly.
So if you're looking to scale, the first thing I thought about is one of the problems that a lot of doctors have in growing their business is, in order to grow your business, you often have to invest. Yeah, so you have to spend money to make money. So bringing on a new staffer may set you back in revenues, may set you back in salary for a period of time until you catch up and then jump ahead. Whereas with Teem, if you've wished you could grow and scale and get more people, this might be a great way to get there.
Exactly.
What's the onboarding process for a team member like?
Yeah. So when a practice comes to us and says, hey, let's move forward, we actually schedule a kickoff call. So where we learn what hours do you want this team member working? Do you want part-time? Do you want full-time? Do you want them on Saturdays and Sundays? And then also, what are the soft skills that you care about? Well, if they're doing scheduling, having some level of scheduling or sales experience is helpful. If you're looking for someone for more back-end paperwork, looking for someone with admin experience and passion for the details is important. So we learn about all of the nuances of the roles. We then go look through our active pipeline of people that meet our requirements. And then generally about a week later, we come back to the practice and say, here's your 3 interviews back to back to back in 15 to 30-minute slots. The practice does it, and they can come back and say, hey, we really liked Cory. We want to bring him on. Or we, want to have one more person do final interviews between 2 of them. So it's a very authentic and natural hiring process where whoever is leading that process within the practice makes the final decision. From start to finish, it takes about 1 to 2 weeks.
Excellent. Makes sense. I've hired on-site employees virtually using Skype. One of my best employees ever, a doctor, as a matter of fact, I hired, who's still with me, was hired over Skype because of the distance. And so that's very doable. Excellent. Well, that's great. That's a lot of information to absorb. And I think it's going to be very, very valuable for the industry. How can the people watching and our members learn more about Teem?
Yeah. So best way to reach us is through our website, which is www.hireteem.com. And I'm sure we can throw that link in the comments, but it's HIRETEEM.com. And there's a booking a discovery call on there where we can set up a call and see if it, mutually fits on both sides and then get it started. But it's been really good to chat today. I appreciate the opportunity, and we've been really excited about the growth in the industry recently.
Yeah, thank you. It's exciting for me too. I think you're at a point in time where a lot of your success is fortunate because of the situation the world is in and the world's come into. It's the right time to start considering this. Whereas I know 1 or 2 thought leaders in our industry who were talking about this years ago, and people would poo-poo it. They had their staff down to 1 member. A good friend of mine, Justin Bazan, years ago it was in Brooklyn, and of course it's not like the rest of the world, but still he had a remote receptionist, and everybody was like, oh, that's crazy, I would never do that. Well, now I think people will take a second look at this and consider this for at least some positions, if not the ones that the staffing positions that they can't fill as well. So thank you, and we look forward to hearing more from you in the community and reaching out. The members will reach out with questions and comments, and we'll put the links in the produced video so people can easily access that as well. So looking forward to the next one. Thank you for being here, and take care. Congratulations.
Thanks, everyone.